Change begins from within. As easy as it is to look outside of ourselves and want the world to change, the truth is, it never will if we remain the same. This podcast was created for changemakers like you who want more love and connection in your community. Today, you are going to hear stories that will inspire you and also challenge you to be the change. We are going to go deep, my friend. So take a deep breath and settle in. My name is Emilia Tamburini. Welcome to the Circle of Change. Hello, hello. Ooh, welcome to our 50th episode. Yay! That feels like a pretty big milestone. It's just sinking in this very moment. How cool is that? Oh, and what a special episode to celebrate our 50th episode. We have a community changemaker who is using every ounce of the lessons she has learned in life to help others in need. I'm so deeply inspired by Suzanne's work in the world and look forward to sharing her story with you. Before I introduce you to Suzanne, I want to thank those of you who are jumping in and becoming Circle of Change supporters. Over time, we're going to have more bonus materials for you, like videos and maybe even t-shirts. Yay! This has been a dream of mine for a few years. I've got the best logo, but we need more supporters before we get to that reality. So if you want to learn more, head to humconsulting.ca/donate to become a supporter. We appreciate every single dollar. Thank you so, so much. Our circle today is all about connection and its power to heal our trauma and the trauma in our world. This is a comeback story from a diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder to healer. This is a story that applies to everyone and is so fitting for our world today. Suzanne Venuda is a mental health educator, an advocate, consultant, writer, mentor, and inspirational speaker. In 2018, she was recognized for her work and awarded the Coast Mental Health Courage to Come Back Award. In 2022, she was a speaker at TEDx Surrey, the premier TEDx event in Western Canada. We have a link to that show in the show notes. Please go watch it. It is so touching. You know, your heart needs to watch this talk. It's so beautiful. The ways in which Suzanne speaks of caring connections and the ripple effects in the world and your own life is both simple and profound, which I think is the best combination. Although we know through her stories that there is deep trauma in Suzanne's life, she does not speak of any of the details. And I want to let you know that. And she wants to let you know that because she really wants all humans to be able to access and hear this conversation. So although we talk about the impacts of trauma, we do not talk about traumatic events. What we do talk about is a path to finding your true essence and creating a world that is loving, caring, and kind. That is an amazing conversation. And speaking of caring connections, Suzanne has asked that this show be dedicated to her dear friend and mentor, Bill, who this week she is saying goodbye to. Suzanne shares these words. Every relationship starts with connection. We never know when or where or how it will, if it will, develop. Bill is one of those who I had no idea where it was going to go. I am grateful and honored and blessed that he is woven within who I am and will always be with me. He guided and helped me find the courage to look in the dark and find the treasure of the real me. He is my Anam Cara, which is Celtic for soul friend. So, dear Bill, we are holding you in this circle with us today. Much love to you. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome to the Circle of Change.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor for me to have you here in Circle with us. I first met you through an email and then listening to your TED Talk. And just so the listener knows, when I opened Suzanne's email, my whole body just filled with shivers. And I didn't have to watch the TED Talk to know that we were going to connect in some profound way. And it was an absolute yes to have you here with us in Circle. And then, of course, I watched the TED Talk. I've watched it a few times now, and I tear up every single time because your message is just so profound and it goes right to the core of who we are as human beings. So I'm really delighted to bring your ideas, thoughts, wisdom here into the Circle today.
Oh, thank you. I'm touched. Thank you.
So we are sitting here in Circle with the listener who is joining us, and we like to start by taking a moment to really get present with this moment and open ourselves up to what it is we're here to receive, why we've taken the time to come here and gather together. So if you want to, and Suzanne, you're welcome to do this too, close your eyes and take a deep belly breath in and let out a big sigh if you want to, but just let out any energy that you want to release in this moment. And feel free to ground yourself with a few more breaths, just getting really present with where you are, your body, and why it is you're here today. And as you do that, I'm going to read us a poem. This is one of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver. I liked this poem. It was a little bit cheeky, but we'll see how it trickles into our conversation today. It is called Can You Imagine? For example, what the trees do, not only in lightning storms or the watery dark of a summer night or under the white nets of winter, but now, and now, and now, whenever we're not looking. Surely you can't imagine they just stand there, looking the way they look when we're looking. Surely you can't imagine they don't dance from the root up, wishing to travel a little, not cramped so much as wanting a better view, or more sun, or just as avidly more shade. Surely you can't imagine they just stand there, loving every minute of it. The birds or the emptiness, the dark rings of the years slowly and without a sound thickening, and nothing different unless the wind, and then only in its own mood, comes to visit. Surely you can't imagine patience and happiness like that. It is kind of hard to imagine. Sometimes. I love it though. Did that strike any chords with you?
Yeah, it did. It's if you watch kids, they don't go anywhere, but they imagine. And the bit about seeking the sun or seeking the shade, for me, that's what caring connections are. Those moments when you find the sun that you need or you find the shade that you need. And I love Mary Oliver. I'm new to her. I've just been introduced to her, I think, in the last year or two. Late bloomer, what can I say?
Oh, yeah, that's all. I feel like these teachers and poets come to us at the perfect time.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So I'd love to leap right in and have the listener get to know you a little bit more by asking the question, who are you, Suzanne?
I am a mental health educator, advocate, consultant, writer, and inspirational speaker. I'm also a mother, wife, sister, friend, hiker, gardener, a lover, and protector of nature. I have a wicked sense of humor that is not always appreciated. And I really enjoy a really good cup of tea. With life's challenges that I've had, I often joke with my friends and say that in my past life, I must have been some Irish warrior goddess. So I draw on that often. And I'm passionate about the healing power of nature, the healing power of storytelling, the importance of compassion, and the power of a caring connection. Yeah, that's pretty much who I am in a nutshell. I mean, I could go on for 2 hours. It's the Irish heritage and the storyteller, right? But there you go.
Uh, Beautiful. And yeah, I love your humor. It came out in the TED Talk and it made me laugh. And of course, there will be links to your TED Talk in the show notes so people can go and absorb it because it's such a beautiful experience.
Thank you.
So you've suggested or intimated a little bit that life has been a bit of a journey for you. I love hearing people's stories and finding out how it is they got to here and doing the work that they do, being an advocate for mental health. So would you share with us a little bit of your story in terms of, yeah, how it is that you got to here being this mental health advocate or wherever you think you are now?
Yeah, sure. It'd be my pleasure. I tell people this was not my chosen career. I was an early childhood educator, and I was a really good one. In my 30s, because of past childhood traumas and issues, they finally caught up with me. I couldn't run anymore, so I got quite ill with depression and stuff. And then I was correctly diagnosed in 2001 with dissociative identity disorder, which is basically a coping skill. It's an automatic coping skill that a child has to help survive overwhelming circumstances. When my psychiatrist, we came to this conclusion, both of us, we did screening and everything, questions, all that other stuff. I went looking for information. There wasn't a lot out there, but there was a lot of stuff that is just incorrect. And I started to get really angry about that. I got to a point where my lovingly guardian angel softly hit me across the side of the head with a very padded 2x4. And I came to the realization that I could have a hissy fit or I could do something about it. So I chose, I'm going to do something about it, having no idea how I was going to do that, where my direction was going to go. CBC Radio at the time had a program called Out Front. And I thought, I'll throw them a, you know, pitch. What are they going to say? No. And I was stunned when they accepted it. So that's basically how it started. And so it originally started with helping folks understand what DID was. And then it's just sort of morphed into a bigger, wider net, what living with mental illness is, healing journeys, what helps. I didn't plan any of this. It just kind of, the universe is going, okay, we're throwing this in your path. But I always said yes. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't, but here I am now.
Hmm. I feel like it just takes so much courage to say yes to those callings. Having a hissy fit feel, could feel a lot more satisfying in the moment, but yeah, not over the long term.
Yeah, and it is a process, right? You need to feel frustrated and angry, and that was one of the things I learned. I always thought anger and rage were the same thing because that's what I grew up with. It was a huge epiphany when I realized anger is an emotion and that's okay, but rage is an action,
Mm.
right? It's two different things, but we as society often put them all in the same bucket, but they're not. So, yeah, so hissy fits are fine. We all have them. I've had many, many over my lifetime. That's what you do after that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, tell us more about rage. What does that mean in action?
Rage is I can be angry because people don't understand my illness. Rage is I can attack them physically or verbally. Two different things.
It seems to me to understand the difference between anger and rage. And the way I'm hearing that is we have our emotions, but then we can, if we take action on them, then we are actually causing harm out there in the world, maybe not just within ourselves. And so there's a difference there. What does it require of us, of people, to hone that awareness of what it is we're feeling and maybe how it is we're projecting it out there into the world?
That's a really good question. When I first started with my psychiatrist, I remember him making a comment about me being really angry. And I thought, what's he talking about? I'm sitting here, I'm chilled, I'm not hurting anyone, I'm not screaming, I'm not attacking anybody because I had those two mixed up. So what I needed to do, I had anger and rage mixed up. So what I needed to learn was it's okay to be angry. It's an emotion, it's healthy, it's valid. Way back when it kept us alive, still does at times. And then I learned that I can feel angry, but I don't need to act on it the way I perceived what it was. It's not an easy journey. It was a huge learning curve for me, and realizing that I am in control. I can be angry and not hurt myself, not hurt anyone else. And it's a tough journey. When I first started working with that, I would feel angry for maybe 10 seconds. It wasn't, the whole thing. And then 10 seconds, and I realized, then I could look back and go, okay, I was safe for those 10 seconds, even though I felt angry. So it's to have that safe environment that allows you to feel what you're feeling, and knowing that you're supported with that. That was a huge, huge thing for me.
Nature has played a pretty big role in your life, it feels like, and you have some connection with Outward Bound Canada. I'm curious about that relationship and how it has played a role in this healing journey that you're on.
When I was like 12 or 13, Outward Bound Canada came to my school. I was in grade 8 and did a presentation. And I thought, oh man, that would be awesome to do. But, by that time, life had already, beat me up, chewed me up, spit me out in the gutter type thing. And I thought, I'm not worthy. It's not going to happen, yada, yada, yada. In 2005, I was in therapy, and I was just kind of stuck. As my son says, you need to level up. And therapy was wonderful, and I was doing everything right, but I just needed something else. And then somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered Outward Bound Canada. So I went down to the library and Googled them, and they have had and still do have a program called Women of Courage. And it is for women who have had trauma at some point in their life. And Outward Bound Canada supplies all the gear, all the food. It's a fully funded program. If you need hiking boots, if you're going hiking and that's going to be a bit of a burden, they'll make it happen. So my first Outward Bound trip was in 2005, and it was an 8-day canoeing trip in Algonquin Park. It was a very, beginning of my journey. I remember landing at the airport in Toronto where they were picking us up, and I was terrified of the world. I didn't trust anybody, let alone myself. I couldn't look people in the eye. I was constantly looking down. And then they came and they picked us up, and then the other people at the train station. And then they drove us up to where our base camp was. And the next day, and we were introduced to our everybody else and our instructors and stuff. And the next day, before we all went together, we stood in a circle. Outward Bound is a thing about circles. And there was some climbing rope in a circle, and we were to step in that circle, lift the rope up, and lean back. And it was to represent that we are supporting each other. I couldn't do that. I couldn't lean back. I thought, nope, F you, ain't happening. By the end of the 8 days, I trusted that group enough to hold the ropes while I laid up a rock face. It was amazing. And being out in the wilderness, away from everybody, and they even had a circle because there was some conflict going on, which I was oblivious to. And I'm thinking, are you kidding? Like, what? Like, I'm imagining all these things that can happen, right? And it worked. It was fine. Being able to connect with the land, being part of the land, learning to feel, and starting to get into the rhythm of the land allowed me and everybody else not only to connect with ourselves, but allowed us to connect with others. You don't realize a lot of this until after you go home. And there's challenges like, why am I here? Who thought this was a good idea? But you're supported. And it's fascinating because when you start the course, the instructors are right there to support you, show you how to do it, do a lot of stuff for you. But in time, they start to pull away. And then you start to form this really tight community. And I always say, the work happens after you get home. So that was in 2005. I did a speaking gig to a group of women in Vancouver in 06, 07. They asked me to go on a trip up in Strathcona Park here because they were bringing social workers and stuff back into the course to let them know what it was like. 2012, I did Rocky Mountain course. 2015, they asked me to go on another course, and then there was an alumni, a Women of Courage alumni that got together at the Bobby Burns Lodge in the Selkirk Mountains to give feedback. In, I don't know how many years, 2017, they asked me to come over to Vancouver and talk to a group of funders and supporters of the program. And in it was 2019, they said, "Do you want to come on to Mount Blanc, the Tour de Mount Blanc trek?" And I went, "What is that? I don't know where this is or even what it is." And this was like 4 months before they were going for a Reach Beyond program. Yeah, so it's weaved itself in and out of my life, and all the lessons I've learned have helped me go. Even when I was in the psych ward here, what I would lovingly call the St. Joseph Spa and Treatment Center, um, I I had pictures of my Outward Bound trip on the wall, and I remember on the North Coast Trail. So I would hit a really tough point, and I would look back and remember when you're on the trail, you've had enough, you're losing your crap, you wanted to scream and yell and throw your backpack into the ocean and scream at the Coast Guard because they're not coming to pick you up, but you got through it. They helped create a foundation of that I never grew up with, of that strength, the resiliency, and the skills to move forward with everything I do and in life. And they have, amazing youth programs, and yeah, can't say enough. But I guess I'm kind of their, poster child, older, wise poster child. But
Wow, that's a great organization to be a poster child for. I mean,
it is, yeah,
yeah, how amazing. I mean, you've touched on so many things. One, the aspect of being out in nature and having everything else silence and just kind of being present with what was there for you and for your group.
yeah, and you can't run away. There's no cell phones, there's no distractions. You can't run from whatever your own crap is, right? And they're very trained. They're qualified and trained to support you and hold the space for you and accept where you are at and what you're feeling at the moment, and just hold it for you. And just like, it's okay, non-judgment.
Yeah, that's such a powerful environment to be in. The other thread that stuck out was the power of connection. And that's really what you speak of in the TED Talk that I listened to. This sort of just gave it another element or another level, another layer, I'll say. So what does that mean to you, the power of connection? And is there a way that we can bring that into our lives in some way or start to hone that?
The power of connection is something that we often don't consciously think about. But if we start thinking about the folks who have had these meaningful connections with us in our lives, and I say they can be big, small, or what I call micro connections, those seemingly irrelevant moments that take seconds but can leave a huge impact. The majority of us are not aware of the power that these things hold for us because we often don't run into the people again later and hear about what their connection meant for us. I speak to a lot of youth here in the schools, and because we live in a smaller community, they run into me and they'll tell me. I ran into a young fellow last year up in the mountains hiking, and I presented to his class, and he told me what it meant for him and how he's taken that forward with his challenges with his college and stuff. Now, I would never have known that. Once we start to become aware of this, we'll start to notice it more. It's like when you do research, you're going to buy a car, you buy a Toyota RAV4, and then all of a sudden you notice they're all over the place. But you didn't notice that before. These connections have the power to heal. They have the power to let somebody know they've been seen. As society, we often think that we have to do something big, to help make the world a better place. And so we often don't think we can do anything. But these connections can happen. They can make change happen. And as I said in my talk, the people that connected with me couldn't change what was going on in my life. But the fact that they gave me those connections gave me hope. No, I really do believe that once we become aware of this, and we can all start doing it, then we can make change happen. It doesn't have to be this big, expensive, a wonderful thing, which is still needed. Those are still very much needed. But we as individuals can connect with the guy on the street, with the person who's serving me coffee. How are you doing today? Thanks. Somebody, my coach, my speaking coach for TED, one of the exercises she asked me to do was when you go up to somebody or talk to them, ask them, what made you smile today? And that's not really easy to begin with.
It's very vulnerable.
it and that's connection, right? It's a safe place. I see you, you see me for this nanosecond, but they'll remember that. Yeah, they're like gems, and we can just keep putting them in our pocket and collect them, and they have amazing power to make change happen. And I think once we start noticing connections with others and thinking how people have connected with us in the past, it also helps us learn to connect with ourselves. Often, a lot of issues and challenges happen because we have lost connection with ourselves. So, that's Susie Psychology 101.
I like it. And my own experience has certainly mirrored that wisdom as well. I was at a very painful point in my life, and I recognized that I kept looking outward for people to change, for people to be a certain way, for me to be okay. And it wasn't until I turned the lens backward and started looking in here, that's when the healing and the real transformation started, and the connections in my life deepened.
Yeah, very much so.
Is there another story that is coming to you right now that you'd like to share about how connection, maybe a smaller form of connection, really impacted you?
Yeah, I think back to I was in high school, so I was grade 11, and our school was overcrowded. There was 700 kids in my grad class. And so I was this lost kid. I was never any good in school. I failed pretty much every English course I ever had. I wasn't a scholar. I wasn't, excelled at anything. So I was invisible, I believed. And I remember walking down the hall one time, and this teacher came up and he gently put his hand on my left shoulder and said, "Hi, Suzanne, how are you doing?" Now, I wasn't in the place to be able to tell him how I was doing. I was dealing with life and depression and all sorts of stuff. So I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine." But the fact that he stopped for 10 seconds made me realize I'm not invisible. And, this is what I'm 63 now. So 40 some odd years later, I still remember that as clear as a bell. Those 10 seconds. That's all it takes.
I love that. The other thing that I'm really picking up on by listening to your stories is that you're very open in that maybe some of these moments happened to you, but you weren't aware enough at the time to really notice or show up in a way that you would show up today. And for me, that is just saying, like, this path isn't linear.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very circuitous but ever deepening, it sounds like I'm just imagining this spiral going deeper, deeper, deeper.
Yes, very much. Often it's not until you're down a few more layers for me anyways, of the spiral that I'm in a place to be able to look back and go, right? To be able to be far enough away from it that I could observe it and see how it impacted my life. In that moment, I was just trying to survive in school, but it was still tucked away in my mind and in my soul somewhere. The power of that impact was that it would come up when it was needed.
Yeah, because it wasn't like you had this outward bound experience and then everything was like, whoop, all good, smooth sailing, right? It's like, nope. I feel like the universe, it kind of prepares us in layers. It's like, okay, we've given you this experience, so now you can experience this thing, but you're going to draw on what you learned in that previous experience.
Yeah, it's all about growth, man, continual growth. And it's like, yeah, I'm like, seriously, universe, and they build up on that foundation, all these experiences. And, it's like these connections, these caring connections, if you can think back and even just start jotting down or writing, you will be amazed. Because once you start thinking of one, the other ones will come, right? And you'll be amazed what is actually there. And they are there as a foundation to support, your next step.
I really like that wisdom, because often I know for myself, when I'm really in a dark hole, it's really hard for me to remember any of those previous experiences where I've demonstrated strength or resilience. So just to have that list that I can tap back into very easily, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, lists are great, like you said, because I remember not being able to be in a point where I can think that and I can look at it or pictures, put it together in a book or whatever, right? So when the times are tough, come out and I'm educating folks on trauma informed care. I talk to the doctors and stuff here and helping them understand how adverse childhood experiences can impact a person. That needs to be said, can impact a person throughout a lifetime so they can help understand behaviors and stuff. But I also advocate we need to ask these folks, when does somebody connect with you? Because that is just as much, if not more powerful for healing. The understanding is good, but asking who connected with you, how did you get through that? Do you remember somebody that helped you? That helps them realize that, oh, okay, yeah, people were there that I don't remember. They couldn't fix anything. They couldn't fix my situation couldn't change what was going on in my life, but they made a huge difference. They gave me hope.
There's such a powerful message there of you're not alone and support is all around you,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think so many people really need to hear in this moment.
We are living in challenging times. Definitely. We're all COVID fatigued. We're done. The last 2 years, we've all done what we needed to do to get through this. And it's like you've run a marathon. And then at the end of the marathon, you can relax. And then you realize how tired you really are. And people are, I've got friends going, I don't understand why I'm so tired. And I said, do you have any idea what your system's just gone through for the last 10 years? Do you have any idea what happens when you constantly have adrenaline pumping through your system? It's exhausting. So it's really important for folks to realize it's okay to be tired. We've all worked really, really hard, and be compassionate with yourself and caring. What would you say to a friend who's just done a 2-year cancer journey? You wouldn't say to him, well, why aren't you working more? Of course you wouldn't say that, right? But we on a global scale have done this journey. Yeah, we need to be compassionate with ourselves and self-care, says the person here who had septic shock and is like, why am I not better yet? Right. So,
Yes.
um, I'm not always as wise as, it's something folks think I am, but it's about being compassionate with others and ourselves. Those moments of connection are when we see the other, our humanity. And that's pretty powerful stuff. It can be scary for people like me who have had trauma in my life. I look back now and I realize people were connecting with me, but at that time I couldn't take it in. I couldn't accept it, but now I can. It doesn't go away. It's not like it's not going to go stale if it's left on the counter. The strength is always there, even if you were not able to receive or accept it at the time.
And in your experience, is that an ongoing practice, like to keep your heart open to receiving?
It is when I find myself getting envious of others and what they have and what I don't have, or a perception that I think it's easier for them. That's when I go, okay, Susie, something's going on here. Your inner and outer world are not aligned. What do you need to do to bring that in line? I am spend each day with gratitude, try to come into every situation with an open heart without any facade. What you see is what you get. But I'm not perfect. I don't pretend to be perfect. I have, faults and issues but I'm aware of that. So I can catch myself better now when I start to be envious. And I'm going like, what's going on here? And it's usually something I need to work through, some past stuff, or I'm tired or need quiet space, self care. But I can notice that now and go, okay, something's something's not quite aligned here. So what do I need to do to bring that back? Because I love being open to the universe. I remember when I realized the universe has been lovingly holding space for me. It's just waited for me to catch up and realize that. And that was one of the things I learned through my TEDx process. It was a huge learning thing, not always comfortable, but it's like, okay, the universe is holding me. Like it's okay, right? And I constantly need to learn about myself. If I don't, for me anyways, it's a pond that doesn't have any movement becomes stagnant, and I was stuck and frozen in a place of time for so many decades that I don't want to do that again. And that's also part of the, when I start feeling envious of others, it's like, okay, what's going on here? Are we missing something? What is there something else you need to be doing in your life to feel fulfilled? It's an uncomfortable journey, but man, life is wonderful. If you talk to that 4-year-old kid that I talked about in the talk, never in a million years, or that teenager in the hallway, in a million years would I think I'd be doing what I'm doing. And a lot of it is listening to your guts for me. If it doesn't feel right, maybe it's not the right choice. And you can try stuff, and if it doesn't work out, that doesn't mean you failed. Just means that wasn't the right thing for you at that moment, but you've learned along the way, and those lessons you've learned you can take forward with you to whatever the next step's going to be, or the next path you go down.
So many nuggets of wisdom there. I think
Thank you.
this will be an episode to re-listen to and really absorb everything you've just shared. One thing that is striking me is that this work of getting to know yourself, that you've taken that upon yourself to do it, and you're obviously seeing the benefits of what that brings for you, your life, your relationships. It was the part about just showing up authentically, not being perfect. What I believe that does, and what I feel with you, is trust, that you are a safe space to be around, because there's no persona that I have to work through. It's like, you are Suzanne. I know that this is who you are, no matter where we run into each other. And for me, that there's something in that allows me to open up even more and connect with you.
Yeah, it allows others to see that it's okay to do that. And that wasn't my intention when I started my work. Even on my worst days, I'm still me, because I've got no facade that's going to fall away and surprise people. I still have my wicked sense of humor that is not always appreciated. I still like my cup of tea, even on my worst days and my worst times. This is who I am, which was a big journey because, growing up, I wasn't allowed to do that. It wasn't safe, so I had to protect myself. It's another thing I tell folks: whatever you needed to do to protect yourself in the environment growing up, and whatever happened to you, is not who you are. When I talk to the psychology students here in the high schools, I always give them a little crystal. And I say to them, we're all born with an essence. And if we're brought up in an environment where that essence is to be celebrated and supported, then you can be who you authentically really are. If you're brought up in an environment like I was, when that wasn't supported and people projected all their crap and everything on me, and I thought that's who I was, as I did my work, I realized that's not who I was. But that essence was always protected. Nobody can touch it. No matter what happens to it, your spirit can be broken, but your essence is always protected. Nobody can damage that, no matter what happens. It's there. And when, and as I tell the students, when the time is right and it's safe enough, it's, all that old crap is going to start breaking away, and it's just going to shine through and, be spectacular you.
Yes, I love that. Is there anything else that you want to share before we close out with our final question? What do you want people to remember about your journey or life, or what you've learned?
That the world actually is a beautiful, wonderful, and for the most part, safe place. We have the ability to endure. If you think about it, all our ancestors survived horrific things, the tenacity, that is in our DNA. Every person in our family that went before us that survived, we have that tenacity in us, and we are a lot stronger than we realize. And that could be scary at times when we start to understand that. Yeah, life is good. If somebody told me that, 20 years ago when I started my journey, I'd tell them where to go in a nice, not so way. Start noticing these caring connections, start writing them down, start watching, noticing, toddlers, watch kids like they have no preconceived notion about connections. Watch them in a park. You'll see it. Once you start noticing it, you'll see it more and more and more.
We end the podcast by asking the question, what does being the change mean to you? Because that's really what we're about here in the Circle of Change, is really supporting people to bring back their power, to create a world that they want to live in, that they feel safe in. What does that mean to you when I say that?
Finding your authentic self, and then you can make change happen. If you're going on preconceived notion of what you think you should be, it's going to be a struggle. If you can find your authentic self, give yourself space to listen to your soul or your guts or whatever word you want to use for that, then you can make change happen, because then people know you're not phony. We're very intelligent beings. We know when somebody's being authentic, and we know when somebody's just trying to sell something or give us, the illusion that vanishes into the ethernet. Be your authentic self, be open to the universe, send out gratitude, and you will be surprised what comes. All of a sudden, it starts falling in your path. That is how we make change happen, one connection at a time.
I love it.
Thank
And
you.
I love you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so much.
being here with us and sharing your courageous journey that I know is ongoing. I know that these words are landing with somebody and making a huge impact. So I'm grateful that you took the time today and that you're just courageously doing what you're doing and getting out there in the world and making the impacts where you can, whether that's saying hello to somebody or speaking in front of 3,000 people.
Thank you. Yeah, my philosophy, is I never know where my words, written or spoken, are going to land. They'll land where they're needed. Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I just love being with like-minded people that I don't have to convince. Right? It's like, yeah, I've really enjoyed this. It's been a pleasure. And see, it's another word I can't say with septic shock post-break. Honor. It's been an honor being here. Thank you.
Hi, Changemaker. I want to pop in here at the end to pull out a few nuggets that Suzanne leaves us with in case you want to deepen this work in your own life. At some point, she refers to tension and anger, frustration, sadness being an indication that our inner and outer worlds are not aligned. So the question to ask yourself if you're feeling that tension is, what do you need to do to bring that into alignment? Are you missing something? Is there something else to be doing in your life to make it feel more fulfilling? The second invitation she leaves with us is to write down all of the caring connections that you have in your life. I just did this today, and it is amazing the impact that it has. Once you write these down, you start seeing them everywhere. And what it also does is it switches our focus from lack and missing and needing more to one of abundance and amazement, awe and gratitude and appreciation. And that's really the energy we want to be bathing in these days, especially as we go through this big global transition. So thank you, Suzanne, for those tools. Good luck using them. Please share with me how they go, what your realizations are. I would love, love, love to hear from you. I look forward to seeing you next week in our intimate circle. Ciao. I'm now passing the talking piece to you. If you feel called to put your voice in the circle, please head to humconsulting.ca/podcast and share your story there. I cannot wait to hear what has come up for you as you have listened to what has been shared here today. I wish you love and joy beyond your wildest imagination. Thank you so much for being here in the Circle of Change. I also want to express my gratitude to the following peeps. Circle of Change is recorded on Lekwungen territories, and I am so grateful to live on this land. Our opening and closing music was created by the talented E-Roll Beats. You can find his creations at erollbeats.com. And special thanks to my coach, Mary Chan of Organized Sound Productions, for bringing this podcast to life. Until next time, ciao.